A diabolical, insane ex-husband. The author of the post is listed in the description. Part 1. She met her ex-husband, who she eventually refers to by the name Legion, early 2020. They started dating and decided to lock down together, aka move in together very quickly. He was generous, kind, and open. He made good money and made it clear he wanted to take care of her. He would talk on the phone to his family all the time and sometimes see some of his siblings in person, and he treated her family with kindness. He seemed like an amazing man. They spent a considerable amount of time looking at houses together, and he claimed he was willing to do up to a $700K cash offer on a house. He was just promoted to VP at his business after all, and for some reason, these houses or offers just never worked out. One house he offered the $700K cash on wanted proof of money before they accepted. He fought to only reveal after the offer was accepted, shit like that. He took her to look at cars. None of the cars ever worked out except for one significantly cheaper than originally planned. His phone is always on vibrate. She doesn't hear it ring, but he's always talking. She does not speak directly to a person on the other line ever, but he relays conversation. They were married by January 2021, and he started to switch up on her. He would make comments about what she wore to work, hearing male voices in the background of her calls, calling her at work to make sure she is where she said she was. He made up an incident about someone coming to their house looking for her and said it must have been one of her exes, and he appeared comfortable coming here, implying he thought she was cheating on him. She was aware he made up that incident because of the footage of the day on a neighbor's doorbell camera. He takes her to show her his grandparents' headstone in the cemetery they're buried at. He mentions to her that he has a $90K company car at a building in downtown Atlanta he claims to be where his office is. She did not know about the car, nor the office. She asks to go to the office to see it. He comes up with an outside reason why they can't. When I say outside, I mean he has schemed a reason for the situation to not progress that is beyond his window of personal responsibility. He pretended to have phone calls with, for example, the office manager to see if they can come visit the office, only for the office manager to deny them, things that he has no control over and cannot be blamed for, things he think would defer or deflect suspicion. She starts to realize there is always something, some reason as to why things cannot happen. She mentions wanting to go to overseas, London, etc., comes home one day, and there's an itinerary on the counter for a summer, July trip to London, UK. He wants to take her. They fill out passport applications. Her mom is supposed to come visit in April. Mid-March 2021, she sees a text from a woman pop up on his phone and decided to check it. His aunt and his ex-GF have the same name. It was the aunt. While on his phone, she saw he had FB Messenger downloaded and sees he had a bunch of messages from other women where they were talking about hooking up, some very graphic, which was not a side of him she had ever seen. She confronted him. He said he was just playing around, just flirting. It didn't mean nothing. He moved into the guest bedroom. She wanted to go through marriage counseling. They have been married for 3 months at this point. They sign up for marriage counseling through a pastor, and the pastor is heavily fucking concerned, ol' Mao. Husband claims the messages were about wanting attention, and he, already apologized, so he doesn't feel the need to keep apologizing. He comes to her a few days after the first counseling appointment and suggests they get a joint bank account. She wants to compare accounts. He has almost $10K in his checking. He logs into his savings and shows her $15K, but claims he has a U.S. bank savings and an offshore savings that just has, so much more money in it. But he won't show her because his uncle always warned him about women wanting money. So that becomes the topic at the next counseling sesh. Husband started playing defensive and playing victim about being questioned about his finances. The pastor and his wife say they should not be together, making the husband even more defensive. By the end of April, she still hadn't seen his other bank accounts. And they're looking for houses again. Her lease on the apartment they live in together is going to be up soon. He finds another realtor, a woman named Amber. She expresses that it's important to remember she was under the assumption he is a sane human being, so I can only imagine shit's about to go tits up. He wants to put in an all-cash offer. Amber, the realtor, says, bet, proof of funds? He pulls the shit again about not wanting to show proof until they accept the offer. Amber says, yeah, that's not how we roll. Send the paperwork and I'll submit it with your offer, and obviously that never pans out. Amber eventually calls Risa, our protagonist, and tells her that he's being sus as hell, and Risa tells her to just put a hold on all of it. Amber agrees and tells her if she needs anything, she's there. Amber, the realtor, is a real one. Risa starts to feel embarrassed that they are continuously wasting these agents' time and admits she starts trying to do damage control, so they decided to rent for another year. She starts looking for another job to help fund her car note that he either partially or completely pays for, as she doesn't like being dependent on him for the payment. When she applies to this new job, they do a background check that necessitates collection of her husband's gov name and SIN, SSN. She notices the one he wrote on the background packet was different than the one that was written on their marriage license. In the US, the first 3 numbers of your SSN are attributed to the state you were born in. She noticed his does not align with where he had said he was born. May 2021, things start to reopen in their area, so she's able to actually talk to a live person to do administrative things. She calls San Diego State, University, I assume, and they have no record of his SSN. He rebuffs this by claiming he was a private citizen, student, and that his dad paid, under the table, for his education so the school didn't have record of him. She points out he claimed to play football, why he had all his money. And how would the school have been in compliance with NCAA if his name or information had never been published to a roster? Sorry if this is worded weird, I know nothing about USA school rules or sports LMFAO. He sweeps everything under the rug. He's got bigger fish to fry because he's in pain from fucking his knee up at work. He started taking pain meds. Part 2. Then he claims it was an old football injury. Then it became hard to walk, hard to work on it. They are no longer looking for houses. She still has not seen the savings accounts. He calls her from work at her work one day in mid-May, saying he's been informed by his stepson that his stepdaughter has passed away. He asked his wife if she would object to him giving his ex-wife $2K for the funeral. Obviously, she agrees to that. She does a personal background check on him, and it produced states he has lived in as well as people that had been associated with him, the ex-wife. He told his current wife that he and his ex-wife were married and divorced in San Diego. His background check had no proof of him being in California, ever. But he did live, marry, and file for divorce with her in Atlanta. According to divorce documents, both him and his ex-wife had filed for a pauper's divorce, no financial liability. The documents also gave contact information about the ex-wife, so Risa takes note of those pieces of info, planning to call the ex-wife. She calls the ex-wife. The ex literally says, "Oh, if you're calling me, it must be bad Elmao." Risa says she knows they're in contact. The ex-wife absolutely laughs at this and says anything he tells her is a lie. He gave Risa a fake name. He has never been anywhere past the East Coast. Ex-wife wants absolutely fuck all to do with this man and doesn't want to be involved, but tells Risa that it's horrible with that man and to get the hell out of there, that he's a master manipulator and he's good at keeping people reeled in. Risa asks how her daughter is, the one this dusty man claims died, and her daughter is totally fine, obviously. A couple of days after these discoveries, still May 2021, she, Risa, decided it's time to dial it the fuck up. She looks up his mother's obituary and it lists Legion as having another wife that is not the ex-wife she just spoke to. The obituary is also missing mention of some siblings that he claims to have. He said there were 5 siblings total. In reality, there were 3. If the dam of trust was cracked and leaking before, the obituary is the deadhead that rams into the wall and disintegrates it entirely. Risa is now making a game plan. A lot of the things he has lied about, he has gone out of the way to provide structure for, printing out HR paperwork for his promotion, printing out car titles, printing out this and printing out that. It is a running joke that the printer is just as guilty as he is LMFAO. She decided to search for his grandma's name on Google, finds an old obituary for her also missing mention of his 2 supposed sisters. Risa is confused at this point because he has talked to them on the phone in front of her several times. His knee starts acting up again, and she makes it clear that he is not lying about the fact that he was in pain, and that it was becoming debilitating, and it's important that this is not discounted. It is factually hard for him to walk, and his appetite is diminished. He's also taking more pain meds than what has been prescribed to him. He's losing a lot of weight. By June, she has found his true previous addresses, divorce records, school records, or lack thereof, and family obituaries, all of which he has lied about in some aspect or another. She tells the pastor everything, and the pastor is gooped, gagged, and flabbergasted. Husband has left his old job due to his knee pain, no longer a VP at a condiment company, but working at Apple in some capacity. He is calling out from work a lot more due to the pain. He's dropping weight. She does, however, insinuate that the knee is not the problem, but a symptom of what's going on. One night, she looks through his old work phone from the condiment company and finds text messages between him and a woman he found on Plenty of Fish named Peaches that starts in February 2021. Peaches is, how you say, employed, and they exchange pictures, and Peaches gives her rates after he inquires about what her services cost. Risa finds a text message from the beginning of May where he thanks her for their time together. There are multiple incidences of him physically meeting up with her and contracting her services. Risa admits that at this point it doesn't even faze her. She feels relieved, because up until this point she struggled with the notion of divorce with her deep faith, but knows Jesus has her back, because divorce due to infidelity would be condoned in his eyes and not condemned el Mao. The morning of June 17th, which she adds is his birthday, she goes to him and calmly asks him for honesty. She gently confronts him about never going to San Diego State, never living in California. He jumps to anger, deflects. She says she called and they have no record of him. She keeps going with her proof and tells him she doesn't want to be married to him anymore and they need to go their separate ways. She is calm. Her tone is so soft, and he is absolutely seething. She says, and I quote, "I think you need to call your siblings. Pack a bag and get the fuck out of my house." He calls his aunt, and she overhears him saying to his aunt about how he never lied to her once, and she says she felt like Carrie at prom and snapped like a dry twig. Could have fought every one of the Atlanta Falcons and beat their asses. LMAO. He doesn't want to leave because he has nowhere to go, but his aunt says get out. Her mom tells him to get out because she doesn't think it will end well for him, considering how truly angry her daughter is. She says, get out and go find something with his savings that he's been claiming to have. He's limping around packing his shit. This is when she notices that he has been pissing in the Powerade bottles he's been drinking en masse for the past few months. He has not been going to the bathroom because he's in so much pain, so he's simply been pissing in bottled bedside Shane Dawson style. She is twitching with rage at this point and takes his keys, throws his shit in his car, and tells him to scram, kid. Otherwise, she will beat his ass. If he'd like to stay for that, then that could be arranged. By 1:30 p.m. on June 17th, 2021, he was gone. Part 3. She packed up all his shit, changed her locks, changed her security codes. He texts her saying he made it to Philly. Risa notes the parts will get shorter because there's less backstory now, but he is still texting her because he is going to fight her on the divorce. She files anyways, and gets a message from his cousin on Facebook saying he's telling the family she kicked him out after he caught her sleeping with some dude from work who would be a cop, and that said dude cop threatened him with his work weapon to get the fuck put his own house. The cousin said, "Oh, we know he lies, so I wanted to get your story," and in this conversation the cousin drops that this man does not have as many siblings as he said. Not the amount of brothers or sisters, but he does have a twin. "Y'all, I need a smoke BRB for part 36. She says we're gonna get the family tree." So his cousin, who has called her to try and clear things up, told her that the husband was trying to get some of his family members to call the cop agency, to get this guy that he's lying saying she cheated with, fired, or both. It's so much. And none of his family even knew about her, didn't know he was married at all. Anyways, Risa asks about his siblings. And we find out the husband has a twin that he's been claiming was his younger brother by 2 years, but is his older, by 20 minutes, twin. He also has 0 sisters, and he's been keeping up a charade that he has 2, and one woman he was lying saying his sister and talking to on the phone and shit was his cousin, and they haven't even spoken in 20 years. The husband also said he had half-siblings through his dad, which he absolutely did not. And these are the siblings that Risa had met. So these 2 men she had hung out with as his half-brothers were literally just random men El Mao. He had also said his grandma and uncle died in 2020 and they had died in 2008 and 2010, respectively. He would also talk to a cousin named Junebug regularly, and that cousin had died many years before. The cousin said the family does not fuck with the husband because he's a pathological liar, and when he came home with an insane story, they knew something was up. Risa clears things up and is encouraged by the cousin to get a divorce and get over it. And the next part, the cousin puts her in contact with the older brother that this husband talked to every morning. She has to get a divorce settlement agreement signed by the husband. This man is flip-flop traveling between Philly and Augusta, which I haven't looked up, but I'm assuming Augusta is in Georgia, and they agree to meet at a UPS in Augusta. It had been a week since she last saw him, and he had again dropped a significant amount of weight. His family had kicked him out, and she knew he had nowhere to stay. She describes him as looking awful and smelling like the Chattahoochee dump on a hot summer day, and says she did not recognize him. He looked emaciated. She says it obviously broke her heart, but not enough to not get that signature El Mao. It was signed and notarized on the spot after he didn't even read the divorce procedures, where she had made a deal that everything in the house that he had left behind now belonged to her. They send off the agreement, and she literally sent him $6 for chicken nuggets because he looked like such shit. She realized he had been living in his car and that every single thing he had boasted about financially was fake, even the accounts he did show her. And he just kept lying, said he had somewhere to go, staying with the family that kicked him out. And he left. Is just more clarification about the timeline surrounding her mom visiting in April and the timeline around how he left the condiment company. He had set up his exit from the CO dinner company by complaining about how they had treated him, but would only leave if he could work at Apple for the same, if not more amount of money. Calls her a week later and says he quit and was moving over to Apple El Mao. She found a book bag of paperwork he had left in her house and found paperwork saying he was terminated from the condiment company and had worked at the cemetery where he showed her his grandparents' gravesite, and that was obviously not where his grandparents were buried. He's not related to those people. She also found a copy of a driver's license he had, and the address was the address of the cemetery, and then she found pay stubs from a construction company he had worked for. She found unemployment paperwork for January and February of 2021 before he quit the condiment company, and he worked in the warehouse at the condiment company. He was not the VP. She also found paperwork for a weekender receipt from a jail, which is what lets you be able to work during the week and go to jail on the weekends. She talks to his brother, who he talked to every day, and found out the last time they talked was 2015, just after their mother's funeral. The brother stated that they did not have a good relationship, and that the husband knew not to contact him or he'd whoop his ass El Mao. He revealed the only family member the husband ever talks to is his twin, and it's basically only ever for money. Now, the twin brother is the VP of his company. The twin brother has a 5-bedroom house, drives a luxury car, has a beautiful wife. So he's been mimicking his brother's achievements through straight-up lying. Oh, and even his aunt isn't his Aunt Lamau. And yeah, the half-brothers never existed. They don't have sisters, just a whole smack of lies. The brother states that every relationship the husband gets in just levels up his lying, and the lies get so much worse. How he wouldn't claim the man as his brother. The only thing that was true is that he did have 2 brothers and their parents are deceased. That is it. The uncle that had warned the husband about women wanting his money, dead for years. The cousin he talked to, dead. Like, hello, disturbed. And that's the family tree. The older brother dropped everything he knew Legion had lied about. Their father was not a retired cop, nor did he go to start a church with his wife. One that the husband took Risa to show her. Turns out it was just a random church. Their father was the furthest thing from a pastor. Their mother was not a retired teacher. The father was primarily a long-haul truck driver, and he was at one point a correctional officer, not a cop. He told Risa to run Legion's criminal history. He also explained to Risa that every time the husband claimed he sent a gift to his daughter the husband's niece, for her birthday, etc., it certainly wasn't for his daughter, as they never received anything. So he was just sending kids shoes and shit too? Risa still doesn't know. Part 4. TBU, pregnancy loss, etc. So she goes through his old work phone, which is actually just a secondary phone that the company never paid for. It was just a prepaid phone that he had receipts for adding minutes. She goes into the deleted pictures folder of the phone, and there's screenshots of the checking and savings accounts that were just pictures from Google. anything he'd ever shown her. The house he lived in Cali, the company car he had been given, everything was just pictures off of Google. The aunt calls, and she is the mom's best friend, so he and the aunt may still be close. And she asked what had happened and what was going on with the baby they had had. Risa had miscarried her pregnancy with her husband and had to go through a surgical D&C in hospital. And her husband had lied to his aunt and said they had a baby boy. In fact, he told a number of people that they had had a baby. Anyways, the ex-husband would call her every so often and had not known she was talking to his family members and uncovered his lies. It is July 2021, and all she knows is his name, date of birth, 2 brothers, parents gone. He calls her for money. She asks him why he got fired. He spins a story that he had helped someone he wasn't supposed to. When questioned about jail, he had said he only ever went to juvie and his dad got his record expunged. He didn't even know what weekend jail was. And he married her so quickly because he knew she would break up with him, so he took advantage of the fact she would do it and legally tied her to him. His criminal history showed he had been arrested for trespassing, suspended license and registration, and impersonating an officer, El Mao. And she worked in law enforcement. He used his dad's old CO badge and told people he was investigator looking for drugs and tried to do a pat-down on someone and enter a woman's apartment by force. And said woman was actually in law enforcement and simply called her co-workers so they got his ass. She expresses she did not know she married to a registered felon. So she reaches out to people that he had mentioned because she hadn't heard from him, knew that he was living in his car and got a little scared, worried. Most people she gets in contact with say they haven't talked to him, they weren't cool, or they simply don't have the relationship the ex-husband had stated they did. The ex was uncontactable for like 2 weeks, and every single person she reached out to couldn't care if he was dead or alive because he had soiled his relationship so badly and burned bridges with everyone. In short, nobody gave a shit about him. Legion starts harassing her because he's heard from some random that he didn't have to leave because it was the marital home, blah, blah. And law enforcement, being the ever-helpful presence they are, say, hey, he's basically right, and he's allowed to come back, and she can leave her house. But Risa tells him that if he does come back, she'll report him for trespassing. He kept saying he would come home on a certain day and he would never show. And then one day law enforcement calls Risa and tells her they ran his name through their database and there's a warrant for his arrest. El Mao, his ass shows up. She calls the cops. They pull up and get him out of his car. He has yet again lost a fuckton of weight and is not looking okay. He's arrested and is asking to speak to Risa. He said he just came back for his stuff that was legally hers in the divorce. The cops said they would get someone to check him out because he was clearly having some kind of mental episode. So they take him down to the station with his car keys and whatnot, and his car stays parked in her driveway. Not 10 minutes later, she goes back outside to check the mail, and there's a letter from the court giving her her final divorce decree. She obviously breaks down into a self-described ugly sob because finally the weight of it all just lifts a little bit. She calls his car company because they're looking to repossess it and they take it out of her driveway. Now he legally only had his 2 bags of clothes that he left her house with and his car. Everything else he left at her house had been donated to a domestic violence shelter, and his car had just been towed away with the 2 bags of clothes in it, meaning he'd be released with keys to a car he no longer had, a most likely empty wallet, and the clothes on his back. Womp, womp! After her divorce papers cleared and his arrest, she said she'd never slept so good, Mao. She decided to move house when she knew he would be released from jail, and her movers got her out the house in no time flat. This is the second last part. It is December 2021, and she has moved, but Legion calls her work to try and get her contact information because he needs his things, aka the 2 bags of clothes from the car. She sends him a message basically saying if you ever contact me again for any reason, she will get a restraining order. And that was the last time she ever spoke to him. She accepts he never loved her, never liked her, but is astounded simply how much time he spent lying, how much effort he put into lying, how much he enjoyed twisting the knife and getting her excited only to pull the rug out from under her time and time again. She says it's a level of cruelty that she has never experienced before and prays will never experience again. She accepts she will never know everything and has made peace with that. How do you like this story? Write your opinion in the comments. Let's get 1,000 subscribers on this channel. Love you.